Hello, this slideshow is going to be an introduction to Sgraffito, but also a review of the Sgraffito process because this is directed for 3D Design 3. So if you have some understanding about Sgraffito, we're just going to be doing some review. And if you've never done Sgraffito before, well, this will be new information. So what is Sgraffito? Sgraffito is a decorative technique used in ceramics where you take layers of underglaze. We apply it to leather hard clay, so it's clay that is not fired yet. And then we use tools to carve out a design. And in these two examples here on the screen, everything that you see that is white or beige, that is the clay that has been carved out. Then we fire the piece to bisqueware. Then we glaze it with clear glaze, which allows the underglaze colors to become much more saturated, and then we fire it again. So what makes it similar to just your regular ceramic technique is we are still firing the clay project 2 times in the kiln. And we have lots of examples here of some mugs, and just notice the way lines are being used in these examples here. Now we have 2 more examples of much more complicated forms that use Sgraffito, mostly as a way to create texture, but it's not physical texture, it's more of a visual type of texture. So sgraffito in Italian actually means to scratch. It's a purely decorative process. It doesn't have anything to do with the form, though you do need to have some understanding about constructing in ceramics. It allows you to create intricate details depending on the tools that you use. You can create contrasting images and designs. The process requires time and patience. And the trick is you want to use the right amount of pressure when you're scratching, because if you dig too deep into the clay, well, then you've just created physical texture. Sgraffito is similar to woodcut or linoleum printing, which are techniques used in traditional printmaking. Sgraffito is also similar to scratchboard art, where you have a usually it's a white or silver paper that's been covered in black paint, and then you take tools and you scratch away. Materials that we often use in sgraffito include clay, and again, we use the sgraffito part when it's leather hard, underglaze, which is different than normal glaze, sgraffito tools, which are tools meant for the delicate process of carving and scraping. What else do we use? We use tracing paper because you're going to create your designs on paper. Then you need to trace them onto tracing paper, which we then traced onto the actual clay. Yes, you could just draw by hand. And then we use newspaper. Newspaper is used to collect the carved clay residue, such as we see in this image here. We can brush off this clay residue onto the newspaper, and it just makes it a lot easier to maintain your mess. Paper for templates, because if you are doing any constructing where you need to make measurements, templates is helpful because you can also draw on your templates to get the exact size that you need. So what do you need to remember during the sgraffito process? First of all, we're sketching out your designs on paper, and we want the sketches to be the actual size of your clay project. You're transferring the designs onto tracing paper. At the same time, you also need to construct your ceramic form or forms. You're painting the outside of the ceramic form with underglaze, and depending on what it is, you might need to put underglaze on the inside of the form. Then you're tracing your design from the tracing paper to the 3D form, carving away the areas that you want to appear white or just lighter than the underglaze. Then we bisque fire it. After it's been bisque fired, we clear glaze it, clear glaze every part that we need to clear glaze, and then we throw it in for another glaze fire. And then you have your resulting work. So why do we use underglaze to apply color? Well, what is underglaze? It's technically a slip mixed with a colorant. It's like a liquid clay. And typically it's meant to be applied at the greenware stage of clay, but we can also apply it to bisqueware. It's a different consistency than regular glaze because with underglaze we can mix the colors, which is great because you can get different colors. And also, though, when you fire underglaze, it appears matte, which means it's not shiny. So we apply we apply clear glaze to make the artwork appear shiny and saturated. So here's a before image, and then here is an after image. Notice that the colors are shiny and much more saturated. So we use specific tools for Sgraffito, and you will have access to these tools in the classroom. A lot of them sound like loop tools, which are very similar to what we use when we're constructing with clay, but needle tools are helpful, ball stylus tools, and we also want to use a soft fan brush because that helps remove carvings and any dry clay. So there's just some images here of the tools that we use. I know these look like dentist tools, but again, we need tools that allow us to carve small little details. So when carving, it's important for the clay to be leather hard because the clay is firm, which means it's going to hold its shape. And also, leather hard is just the best stage to carve clay, period, because you get less chunky crumbs that are likely to stick to the surface of your project. The thing is, if we are not careful, our clay can go to bone dry. It can dry to bone dry. And I've seen this happen. And the problem is it's very hard to carve into the surface. Possible. It's possible to carve, but it's challenging. The clay is fragile. It can break. And so it's hard. You gotta stay delicate with your work then. Now this example here has a balance of positive and negative space. So that is something you need to think about when you are planning your designs. You have to kind of imagine in your head what parts are going to be color and what parts are going to be carved away. So what is your project? Well, you're going to be creating a slab mug and plate set where the design follows a theme. The theme is conveyed through the Sgraffito designs and or the form of the mug. Now, the form of the plate, it's a plate. But the mug, there are several ways to change up the form of the mug. And if you want to use a very traditional form for your mug, do that. And then your theme would be conveyed just using the Sgraffito designs. So you have several choices that you can make here. I'm not going to read all the objectives, but basically you want the design of the mug and plate set to visually demonstrate a specific theme. You're going to be creating a mug using the paper templates, and you're going to be creating a plate using the drape technique. And you get to choose the colors that you want to use. But we're also exploring the use of Sgraffito as a decorative aspect on two types of forms. So there is unity created through the theme, but at the same time, it's a decorative aspect, right? We're trying to make a set of items together. So what's nice about Sgraffito is you can create shapes by carving into the surface. So again, these are things you're going to have to consider during the planning process. So both of the mug and plates will be constructed using templates and slabs. Slabs because it's just easier to control the thickness, and then templates you can actually use when you're planning out your actual Sgraffito designs. You will get to choose the overall size and the colors for your mug and plate. Now these are actual student examples created at a different high school. Now you will notice in this example here, they carved away areas and then they applied underglaze on top of where they carved away. You can totally do that too. This is much more traditional. There's black and then there's the carved portions of the clay. Now these are two bowls, but let's think about what the theme could be. So we're back with a student example. And again, this theme is likely dinosaur bones or something about dinosaurs or bones. And what's interesting is the mug, right? What's happening with the handle here? This particular design here, I know the bottom says, the edge says crack is whack. This is a inspired by Keith Haring, who was an artist. So after this presentation is done, you're going to be viewing examples of themes used by artists. You're going to be doing some observation, and then you're going to brainstorm your own ideas for possible themes. Consider your theme carefully. You really want to think about, why do I want this to be my theme? Why? What is the point? Why do I want to focus on this as my theme? And it should be something that you care about. You're going to be a bit more motivated if it's a theme that you're going to enjoy working with.